Good morning. Today, I would like to reflect on my development as a global citizen by focusing on two key skills: moral and aesthetical reasoning, and complex problem solving. Rather than presenting abstract definition, this reflection is based on my personal learning journey during the course. I will first discuss how my aesthetical thinking developed, and then expand how my approach to complex problem charged over time. Finally, I will reflect on what this skill meaning for me as a global citizen moving forward. In a global context, decisions are rarely simple or value natural. Individuals often face situations involving cultural differences, uncertainty, and the competing interests. And for this reason, moral and aesthetical reason help us to evaluate situation reasonability, while complex problem solving allow us to act efficiently within uncertainty. Together, this skill are essential for reasonable participation in diverse and interconnected environment. Moral and aesthetical reasoning refer to the abilities to recognize aesthetical dimension, while everyday situation reflects on reasonability and consider the consequences of decision for different stakeholders. At the beginning of the course, I believed that I already possessed strong aesthetical awareness. However, throughout experience and reflection, I realized that my understanding was often intuitive and shaped by my own culture background. Initially, my aesthetical judgment was largely instructive. While facing unfamiliar or cross-cultural situation, I turned to rely on personal value without fully questioning how others might interrupt the same situation. I often assumed that my perspective was natural or reasonable, which limits my ability to recognize aesthetical dilemmas as aesthetical issue. As a result, border in, implication for reasonability res- and the fairness were sometimes overlooked. During the course, I encountered situations involve cross-cultural collaboration where aesthetical tension were not immediately visible. In this moment, there was no clearly correct choice. My initial reactions, based on personal assumption, did not fully account for how decision could affect others differently. This experience forced me to pause and reflect. Rather than reaction instructively, I began to recognize aesthetical reasoning as a deliberate process that requires awareness, responsibilities, and openness to multiple perspectives. Through feedback and reflection, my aesthetical reasoning became more structured. I learned to actively question my assumption, consider consequences more carefully, and recognize aesthetical complexity within everyday decision. This shift helped me to move from intuitive judgment towards more reflective and responsible aesthetical reason, especially in diverse or uncertain contexts. Turning to the second skill, complex problem solving. I initially approached the problem as if they could be resolved through clear step and predefined solution. This approach worked for simple or technical tests. However, the problem is that I faced during the course involved multiple stakeholders, limited information, and constantly charging contradiction. As a result, my initial linear approach often provide insufficient. And over the time, I learned that the complex problem required flexibility rather than control. I began to break the problem into smaller components, prioritize a key factor, and actively seek input from different perspectives. Most importantly, I adopt that an interactive approach that emphasizes reflection and adjustment instead of an immediate solution. This learning process allowed me to engage with uncertainty with a more constructively and respond to charge more efficiently. Compared to the beginning of the course, my ability to handle complex problems has significantly improved. I'm not more comfortable negatively ambiguous and adopt my strategy when the conditions change. This development is reflected in my increased confidence and improve self-assistance while facing complex solutions rather than avoiding uncertainty. And I now recognize it as inherited part of meaningful problem solving. Reflection on both skills together, I realized that the moral and ethical reasoning shapes how I evaluate situations, while complex problem solution determines how I act within them. For me, global citizenship is not about having perfect answer, but about making responsible decisions in complex and diverse content. Moving forward, I aim to apply this integrated mindset in my future academy and the professional experience, engaging through fully with uncertainty and diversity. Thank you for listening.